r/AskReddit. Redditors who have been in coma. What was the experience like? Did time fly by? Did you have any contact to the outer world? I can tell you what a friend of mine told me. He went into the hospital for surgery right before Thanksgiving, and it didn't go well. He slowly came to in the hospital and he noticed his wife beside him. He croaked something out because his voice was terrible, and his wife burst into tears. When he was able to get to the point where he could ask why, she answered, "You've been in a coma for over 10 weeks. It's February." He thought he was in the recovery room after surgery. Holy shit, imagine that. Thinking your surgery had gone fine and you'd just woken up, but bam, nope, you just lost 10 weeks. And Thanksgiving, and Christmas and New Year's. I was hit in the neck with a machete about 2 years ago, and fell and hit my head. Someone tried to kill me over something stupid. After being life-flighted to the nearest hospital, I was put in an induced coma for a week. I did and do not remember a thing. My quick answer to your question. Wayo, if you don't mind, could you give the backstory to that? I live next to a rough neighborhood, and didn't realize how bad it was. I've lived in some bad places and this seemed no different. I decided that since the roads went in a big circle, that would be a good place to walk my dog. He was a Shar-Pei and big at that, so I thought I would not catch any shit. Well, my mistake for being nice to a guy that said hey to me one day, and we chatted, and got to know each other. He seemed nice. I would talk with him about 10-15 minutes a day, and go on my way. Well, one day he asks if I want to drink a few beers with him, and I told him to let me take my dog home, and I would come back. After doing so, we start getting a little drunk and playing a game of cards on his front stoop. He loses the game and as I didn't know how angry a drunk he got, flipped the table and started cursing me out. Push comes to shove, as I am not going to let anyone talk to me and push me like he was doing. So I hit him, and I guess the alcohol made him easily knockout able and he fell out. As I was walking away, he had come to, went into his house, and chased me down. As it was dark, I could only hear him, not see him, but when I turned, he chopped at my neck with a machete. The next thing I know, I wake up a week later in ICU. Here is a potato pic of my neck. The scar goes all the way around to the back of my neck. Edit. After losing about 3 liters of blood, I passed out on the walk home and hit my head on the concrete, and the person's house I ended up in front of called the EMTs. That caused the swelling in my head. I am still not sure why I was put into a coma. I was out of the hospital in a month, and never really questioned what they did. I was just happy to be alive, and not addicted to all those kick-ass meds they had me on. I was in a coma for 5 weeks due to meningococcal. I had a lot of dreams, most that I can still remember pretty clearly. You can definitely take in what is being said from the people around you. I was 12 at the time, 22 now, and my mother was reading Lord of the Rings to me while I was out. I had some pretty vivid Lotto related dreams, like eating some ice cubes under a bridge with Bilbo Baggins. When I woke up, it felt like I'd been gone a long time, but without knowing how long. Edit. Row. Thanks for the gold, stranger. A friend of ours fell into a coma at age 25, 1992, and woke up at age 36, 2002. She was a Rhodes Scholar nominee, I think. Second-hand information, and quite brilliant. She was still 25 mentally, as if everything was just on pause. Her body was really well preserved. She's really fun and cool and sort of the ultimate cougar. Plus she totally woke up to the internet. Holy shit. It must be absolutely terrifying to wake up and be 10 years older, seemingly overnight. I spent 8 days in a coma last year after a particularly traumatic surgery. My waking thoughts were wondering if I had died or made it. I couldn't open my eyes and I was on a medical air mattress, so I felt like I was floating. This led me to think that I had died, and I remember thinking it wasn't so bad and wondering if my dad would come find me. Once I realized that I was still alive, I thought I had been injured fighting in a war and worried that my wife might not know I was still alive. Trying to communicate with the nurses while intubated and drugged was very difficult. What I learned later from my wife is that she was there the whole time, and while I was fighting against the doctors and nurses, I would immediately calm down and cooperate when she held my hand and sang to me. It still brings tears to my eyes to think of the love and devotion she has shown to me during this time. My dad, emergency room doctor, told me about this woman in a coma he saw during his residency. The experience taught him that you need to treat everyone like they're a fully aware and conscious person, even people in comas. Him and the other residents would all do their rounds. They had regular patients at the hospital and they would go from room to room checking on them with the attending physician who instructed them. One woman was in a deep coma for weeks, months. I'm a little hazy on the details, but it was a long time. Every time they'd come in, he'd say, "Hi Maze, I'm doctor and I'm just here to check on you." He talked to her like she was listening to him, explaining what he was doing to her step by step, and a lot of the other doctors thought it was kind of silly. I mean, she's in a coma, so she can't be listening, right? Well, time goes by and the woman wakes up. All of a sudden, they're doing their rounds and he walks in the room and says something and she immediately recognizes his voice. She came into the hospital in a coma and never saw the man, and never heard him talk while she was awake before that day. She immediately recognizes his voice and says, "Oh, I remember you. You're the one that was so nice to me." That makes comas seem really terrifying to me. The fact that she was conscious enough to recognize not only a voice, but how someone treated her while she was in a coma, still shows you that you can't just assume someone isn't listening just because they aren't talking. Not me, but my dad. My dad was in a coma for about 2 months a couple years ago. Recently we were talking about the whole thing, and he told me that he had dreamed hallucinated that he lived for 10 years, and did all sorts of things during that time. He said it was very vivid, and he walked across the country a couple times during it. When he woke up, got home, he said it would throw him off when he would run into people he hadn't seen since before the coma, because at first he always expected them to have aged by 10 years. Well, he practically got 10 years extra life experience. Look at the bright side. I was in a coma for 3 days after a car accident where I hit my head. Pretty much I was driving, then the color purple, then waking up 3 days later. There really was nothing. It's not even like sleeping, because when you wake up from sleeping you know you were asleep. It is like blinking. 1 second you are doing something, then the next something totally different. I do have a vague memory of being on a table with a cute guy wiping my nose and it hurting really bad. I remember saying, "You are super cute," but that's all. I believe that was before I went into the coma after the accident. I had a brain bruise or something like that and it caused speech problems for about 6 months after. Just a very short time span, less than a week, but it felt like nothing. You just wake up and realize shit happened. You get told you've been injured, what caused it, what eye broke, etc. And somewhere along the lines they also tell you've been kept in a coma. I didn't bother asking the first time around, but I also remember pretty much nothing around that period in time anyway. They may have told me, I just forgot. What I distinctly remember is the time of waking up. It just felt like a dream, until your brain actually decides to take notice of what's happening around you. During the coma, I can't say I've experienced anything at all, not even vivid dreams. But then again, how often do you remember vivid dreams? Mine usually disappear in under 5 seconds after waking up. Time did fly by. In a sense that time flies by as you sleep. You're aware time passed, but that's it. Plenty of other priorities, such as, what's this stick inside my penis? To not wet the bed. Why is part of my beard gone? Accident scar on my chin. Kick ass? Why do I feel drunk? Painkillers and concussion from hell. That's about all I remember from that time. My catheter freaked me right the duck out. I would not stop trying to take it out for the first hour or two. Saddest part is, they did not clean it regularly and there was a crustiness built up around my urethra. This was told to me by a dear friend. When having her second son, she had a scheduled C-section. Her first was also a C-section birth. She had been uncomfortable during the last part of her pregnancy, saying that she felt pain in her bladder. Anyway, during the operation she suddenly screamed, and then hemorrhaged. Turns out she had placenta precreta, where the placenta grows through the uterine wall. It grew into her bladder and intestines. How this was not picked up during all her ultrasounds I will never understand. Her doctors saved her, and it was not easy. She had a heart attack. Her lungs collapsed. I can't remember how many units of blood she needed. We all thought she would die, and she was in a coma for over 3 weeks. Then one day she just kind of woke up. She told me that she does not remember much, but was aware sometimes of voices and a feeling of panic. Her husband talked about how they would put the baby on her chest, and when they picked him back up, tears would leak down her cheeks. She told me that things got lighter in her head, like sun through deep clouds, as she healed. They call her the miracle woman. Was the baby okay? Was he born with any problems? I was in a coma for about 3 days post open heart surgery. I went in for the surgery on a Thursday morning at about 8 AM. The surgery went bad, and I apparently was on a respirator for 48 hours until I could breathe on my own, and awoke on a Sunday night about 11 PM. I thought it was still Thursday. I had no awareness of time past, or of anything that happened while I was unconscious. My freshman year of high school I attempted suicide and almost succeeded. I took a bunch of pills and went to school. The last thing I remember is walking into school. I vaguely remember falling on my knees and hearing screaming. I woke up 2 weeks later in the hospital. I don't remember those 2 weeks at all. I didn't even realize that the time had passed when I woke up. How you doing these days, OP? When I was considered medically dead I couldn't hear anyone. I was in a huge wide room with no walls, just a floor. The floor would occasionally sparkle far off. I could not move. I could just look around. It was completely empty. I could still feel emotions. I had a heavy feeling of being nervous, worried. It felt like I was sneaking into a place where I did not belong. Like a part of the house that was off limits to me as a kid. Time went by so slowly. I felt every second of it. It was only for 4ish minutes, but it definitely felt that long. I could not think. I just felt. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. I felt helpless. Everything was out of my control. I felt trapped. I don't remember, but when I was revived I screamed for minutes. I just screamed and cried. Far out. I was in a coma for 4 days following a pretty bad TB. After that I was responsive but not fully conscious. I would respond to cues but with inappropriate responses. After a couple days of that I returned to consciousness. I felt well rested but extremely hungry. I knew where I was, but not why I was there. I did not remember any of the responses I had given over the last few days. I never did get those memories back. I think it depends. For me, waking up wasn't an instant process. I gradually became more and more aware of what was going on around me. My memory of things that happened shortly after I woke up are a little jumbled with things that I imagined happening as well. I had emergency exploratory surgery for my perforated ulcer that lacerated my artery in my duodenum. After my surgery was a success with only a 15% chance of living. I was put into a sedated coma for 8 days. It flew by so fast. I remember going in for surgery, scared, tired, exhausted, anemic, then bam. Waking up 8 days later feeling that it was only a night ago. They had me on fentanyl, propofol, Versed, to keep me from waking up and moving about. I remember having some vivid psychotic dreams, so in detail that it felt real. People tearing each other apart, eating each other, etc. I was not in a coma, but I had major surgery last year. Right after, for a couple weeks I had horrific nightmares. Nazis, torture, surgery, thrown off high things. Just the worst. But I am over it and do not remember much at all now. I knew when I woke up it was just the medication. I got off the pain pills as quick as I could. I hate that crap. Yep, it was the worst, giving me the night terrors. I read all of the side effects and it was literally making me hallucinate while in ICU. I thought they were trying to kill me off, torture me, and it all felt so real even though all of them just saved my life. Those drugs are extremely powerful and will make you not think straight. Also, it didn't help I had ICU psychosis when I woke up. Being in ICU for 12 days straight didn't help either. This will not be seen, but hopefully I can get some answers advice. My friend was in an accident about a week and a half ago on Tuesday, the 26th of February. Her mother and her boyfriend, and baby's father, were on the way to find out if they were having a boy or girl. They were hit on the way there. Her mother and boyfriend are dead. She was flown to a hospital and put in induced coma for stabilization, and there was bleeding on her brain. She and baby are stable and bleeding stopped. They are trying to let her wake up on her own now. She will open her eyes sometimes, and she's had a couple incidents where she has pulled stuff out, but she's not awake yet. Is there any advice to help her wake up? Or even how to tell her the news of her mom and BF? Is there any chance of her not waking up, or is the fact that she is opening her eyes good? TL. DR. Friends kinda in a coma now. Any advice is appreciated. Edit. I'm on my phone at the bus station. 14 hours bus ride. I'm on my way home to see her. I was in an off-piste skiing accident in the Alps the 14th of December 2012. Very similar circumstances to Michael Schumacher's accident in that I'm an experienced skier who had a freak accident in dangerous terrain. I broke my left eye socket, entire left cheek, nose, jaw, 3 teeth, collarbone, and 4 vertebrae. I was kept in a medically induced coma for 9 days, and I have vivid memories of my time in the coma. I would describe it as very intense semi-lucid dreaming where I had a measure of control, however not complete control. Stimuli from the outside world definitely appeared and worked its way into the dreams, which truly distorted my reality. Some of the dreaming was pleasurable and some was nightmarish. The real terrifying part was after I regained consciousness, however. First off, you don't just snap out of it. It is a very slow process that took several days. When I eventually realized that I was in a Munich hospital ICU, I didn't know what the hell was going on. The experience really made me question the nature of life and consciousness, and for a few days I believed I had died. It was impossible to distinguish real life from the coma dream state that I had been, which really effed with my head. It was the strangest experience of my life, but it has made me a better man and I'm thankful for it. Edit. I've made a full recovery. The German doctors performed excellent facial reconstruction surgery while I was in the coma and everything is 100% healed. Broken vertebrae did not touch the spinal cord and my back is now fine. My mom attempted suicide this time last year. All of the drugs in her system put her in a sort of medicated coma for about a week, and then she was kind of in and out of it for a month. Her kidneys were severely compromised and she was on a respirator, so they had to give her a Davin. She said she can remember me holding her hand and crying, being moved around, the nurses turning her to prevent sores, and various voices. This is a message from the outside world. Hello, OP. It is time for you to know the truth. A year ago, you were involved in a horrific car accident. You have been living in a coma fantasy ever since. In one day, they are going to take you off of life support. You have to find a way to wake up before then. Stay tuned for further instructions. Bro, you made it to the end. You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.